No king, no empire, no modern corporation has ever controlled as much of the world as the British East India Company. For over 2 centuries, this single company commanded armies, toppled rulers, and rewrote the fate of millions. At its peak, it wasn't just a business. It was an empire with its own flag, its own coins, and its own rules. But how did a group of London merchants set the gears of global domination in motion? The story begins not with battle, but with longing, risk, and the bright, elusive promise of spices. The year is 1599. London's air hangs heavy with sea salt, chimney smoke, and stories from distant lands. In a candlelit room above a wool draper's shop, dozens of men crowd together, their eyes bright with ambition. They are traders, investors, and adventurers, and they have a single obsession: the East. For centuries, spices like pepper, cinnamon, and nutmeg have been worth their weight in gold. But every pinch that reaches England has passed through a gauntlet of Portuguese and Dutch middlemen, each raising the price and guarding the routes with growing suspicion. The English are locked out, hungry for a share. In this small room, a plan takes shape. The merchants pool their fortunes and ask Queen Elizabeth Yi for a royal charter. She grants it. The East India Company is born, shielded by royal decree and armed with a single radical privilege: the exclusive right to trade with all countries east of the Cape of Good Hope. The market is fierce, but the rewards could be unimaginable. Almost immediately, the company faces storms, both literal and political. Its first fleet, 5 ships strong, pushes from the Thames and out into uncharted waters. The journey is brutal, navigation is uncertain, crews are ravaged by scurvy, and the coastlines of Asia are guarded by cannons. Months pass. When the battered ships finally stagger into the harbor at Bantam, an Indonesian trading port, they find the Dutch already entrenched, their own East India Company ready to fight for every grain of spice. The English captains haggle, bribe, and threaten their way to a small but precious cargo. Back in London, the sale of this first shipment sparks wild excitement. Investors pour in, eager for a taste of distant fortune. In the years that followed, the company sends more ships, richer fleets, and sharper negotiators. They stitch together outposts in India at Surat and Madras, building wooden forts behind muddy walls. Every step is a gamble. Each trade deal faces sabotage, piracy, and the prowling warships of European rivals. But English patience and gold slowly open doors. In the shadow of Indian sultans and Mughal emperors, company merchants learn to bow low, to flatter, to play local politics like a game of chess. They are still outsiders, tolerated more than welcomed, but silver coins, well-placed gifts, and European cannon begin to tip the balance. By this point, the company is no longer just a group of shopkeepers. Its ships bring not only pepper and silk, but muskets and soldiers. It should be noted that the company's private army, still small, is already a rare thing in world history. Soldiers hired by a profit-seeking business, not a king. Yet power remains precarious. Across India, Dutch and Portuguese agents scheme in the shadows, while local rulers weigh alliances with care, never trusting any foreigner for long. The stakes rise with every shipment, but change is coming. In the heart of the Mughal Empire, the old order begins to crack. Local princes feud, the Dutch grow careless, and the company's factories expand, their walls bristling with guns. In quiet rooms, company agents sign secret treaties, offering military support in exchange for fresh trading privileges. With each inked signature, English influence spreads another mile inland. Ships multiply in the harbors, their sails blotting out the horizon. Chests of silver vanish into the markets, buying loyalty as often as goods. The company's fortunes rise and fall like the tides, but through persistence and calculated risk, its power grows. Across the world, the English flag now flaps above more and more forts, and the name East India Company carries new weight. However, as success breeds ambition, ambition attracts enemies. For every port gained, rivals plot revenge. And in the palaces of India, old rulers begin to realize that the foreign merchants at their gates are no longer just guests. The company has become a force, armed, determined, and ready to bend the rules of trade into the instruments of conquest. The stage is set for open conflict. The East India Company, once a collection of hopeful traders, is about to become something much more dangerous. The year is 1756. In Bengal, the richest province in India, a new ruler sits uneasy on his throne. Siraj-ud-Dowlah, young and suspicious, looks out from his fortress as company ships anchor by the dozens in the river below. Their cargo holds overflow with silver. Their cannons point inland. It should be noted that the company's nerve now matches its appetite. Its merchants no longer limit themselves to trade. They bribe local officials, build alliances with restless generals, and spread rumors through smoky marketplaces. Everywhere, their spies listen for weakness. Tension flares into violence. In the humid summer, the infamous Black Hole of Calcutta incident unfolds, a chaotic night of imprisonment and death that shocks London and stains the company's reputation, but also serves as a justification. A call for vengeance echoes through the streets of England. More ships are dispatched, loaded with soldiers in bright red coats, muskets bristling from the decks. The company, with its own private army now swollen and battle-hardened, prepares for war. In the fields outside Plassey, under a sky heavy with monsoon clouds, everything comes to a head. Company forces, led by Robert Clive, march through wet rice paddies alongside Indian sepoys. Outnumbered, facing a vast royal army, the company seems doomed. But behind closed doors, Company Gold has already done its work. Key commanders on the opposing side switch allegiance at the decisive moment. The battle is short, brutal, and shocking in its outcome. By sunset, the Nawab's camp lies in ruins. Bengal falls. With a single victory, the East India Company transforms from a trading guild into a ruling power. Clive strides into the treasury staring at mountains of gold coins and crates of jewels. It should be noted that no European corporation has ever controlled so much land, wealth, and life by its own hand. Company clerks, not kings, now decide the fate of millions. But how did the company sustain control over such a vast prize? As British administrators flood in, they reshape the law, tax the harvest, and drain the countryside of rice and silver. Famines sweep the land as company officials demand ever more revenue, ignoring the warning cries of villagers. The scale of suffering is immense. Yet in London, the company's stock soars. Investors in smoky coffeehouses clap each other on the back. The company builds lavish headquarters, hires its own private police, and even issues currency stamped with its crest. It is, in every sense, a nation without a king. In the years that followed, the company's grip tightens. It raises bigger armies, trains local soldiers, and replaces puppets as rulers whenever it pleases. Rival powers, French, Maratha, Mysore, challenge its advance, but each time, the company draws on more money, more men, more firepower. Battles rage in Carnatic, on the plains of Buxar, inside the walls of Seringapatam. The company, guided by profit and politics, learns to play one rival against another, trading promises for territory. Maps expand, borders shift. Each victory brings new provinces under company rule. Unsurprisingly, given the vast scale of this empire, corruption festers. Company agents become petty kings, squeezing bribes and favors from the helpless. In Parliament, critics thunder that the company's directors are drunk on power, ruling distant millions with little oversight. But the lure of Indian riches still outweighs all concerns. British society itself begins to change. Porcelain, tea, and calico flow into the homes of the wealthy. Asian fortunes ripple through the city of London. By this point, the East India Company stands at its zenith. Its flag flies from Bombay to Calcutta. Its armies outnumber those of many European states. Its trade shapes the diet, dress, and dreams of half the world. Yet beneath the surface, cracks begin to show. In distant villages, resentment smolders. Merchants whisper that the company's taxes grow harsh. Soldiers grumble about unfair pay. Even in Whitehall, politicians wonder aloud if the company's unchecked ambition could become a threat to the crown itself. Rebellions simmer. Rivals regroup. The company, once the master of risk, now faces dangers it cannot easily buy off or crush. The next chapter of its history will bring a reckoning the directors in London cannot imagine. As drums beat and fires spark across the subcontinent, the age of unchecked conquest is drawing to a close, heralding a new era of confrontation and consequence. The year is 1857. Across northern India, a spark leaps from camp to camp, igniting a firestorm that the company cannot contain. Sepoys, once loyal to the company's gold, refuse orders and turn their guns on their British officers. Cities erupt in revolt. Ancient forts, thought impregnable, fall to rebel hands. The names of Delhi, Lucknow, and Kanpur become symbols of both hope and horror as massacre and retribution sweep the land. Panic shudders through the British settlements. For the first time, the company's rule appears fragile, its armies overwhelmed by the fury of the very land it claimed to own. In London, news arrives slowly but with a mounting sense of dread. Investors who once toasted the company's dominance now read of embattled garrisons and desperate evacuations. Politicians demand answers. How could a corporation, praised for its order and discipline, lose control so suddenly? The truth is simple. 2 centuries of exploitation had bred resentment deeper than any ledger could reveal. Promises of reform had come too late or not at all. The company's foundations, though gilded with silver and tea, were crumbling. British troops dispatched in haste from across the empire now pour into India to crush the uprising. Battles rage for months. Streets once filled with merchants are scarred by cannon fire. Villages suspected of aiding rebels are razed, their fields left smoldering. The retribution is ruthless, but so is the resistance. For every outpost reclaimed, another flares into revolt. Yet by sheer force, the rebellion is finally subdued. The company's armies, battered and bloodied, limp back to their barracks. The price of victory is plain. Thousands dead, cities in ruins, trust shattered forever. In the aftermath, the reckoning arrives swiftly. Parliament, no longer willing to entrust global dominion to a profit-seeking company, passes the Government of India Act. The company's charter is revoked, its directors stripped of power, its soldiers and territories are absorbed into the British crown. The grand experiment of the world's first multinational corporation ends not with a bold conquest, but with a boardroom closure. The company, once the master of kingdoms, becomes a footnote in the bureaucracy of empire. But its shadow lingers. The railways and courts it built, the boundaries it drew, the wealth it extracted, all leave marks that cannot be erased. Generations will live with the consequences. In India, memories of loss and resistance shape new ambitions for independence. In Britain, the riches of empire come tinged with guilt, and debates rage about the cost of conquest. The East India Company's legacy is not just one of spices and silk, but of famine, rebellion, and transformation. It should be noted that the company's methods, its private armies, political manipulation, pursuit of profit at any cost, set the template for a new kind of global power. Even after its fall, other corporations would study its rise and demise, weighing the dangers of unchecked ambition against the promise of unimaginable gain. And so the story draws to its close. The East India Company, born from a handful of merchants seeking fortune, rose to command armies and reshape continents. It taught the world that commerce could conquer where swords failed, but also that greed, when allied with power, carries a price that cannot be paid in coins alone. The company's rise and fall remains a warning, written in ships and ledgers, in ruined fields and faded flags. No empire built on unchecked power is truly secure, and every empire in time must answer for its legacy.